To the French Republic, for too long you have mistaken African patience for permission. You thought our silence meant surrender. You believed our diplomacy was weakness. You misread our civility as chains, forgetting that even a lion sleeps with dignity. But I write you now, not in anger, I write you with the calm of the ancestors, with the stillness of those who stood beneath colonial gallows, yet never bowed their spirits. I speak with the voice of empires older than your archives, from kingdoms whose gold-built cathedrals you now claim as yours. This is not a letter, it is a reckoning. You came to our lands as guests and left as thieves. You entered with Bibles in one hand and bayonets in the other, preaching salvation as you shackled our minds and plundered our minerals. You renamed our rivers, desecrated our shrines, obliterated our museums, and then dared to teach us civilization. What is civilization to a people who built Timbuktu when Paris was a swamp? What is progress to a people who mastered astronomy while your king still feared eclipses? France, this is not about the past alone. This is about your present appetite. This is about how you still drink from African wells and pretend your thirst is righteous. You speak of partnerships, yet your embassies dictate our elections. You preach free markets, yet your companies monopolize our resources. You scream about democracy, yet your soldiers guard dictators who serve your interest. And in Burkina Faso, in the heart of West Africa, we say enough. You still owe us gold artifacts, blood, and truth. You've built museums from our stolen memory, economies from our stolen labor, and pride from our stolen identity. You created narratives that depict Africa as broken, yet it is your fingerprints that stain every fracture. You owe our mothers the sons buried under your foreign wars. You owe our soil the purity you poisoned for uranium and profit. You owe our future the dignity you tried to erase with every lie published in your newspapers, every puppet installed in our palaces, and we are no longer asking politely. The storm is not coming, the storm is already here. It gathers in the minds of our youth who no longer dream in French. It whispers in the chants of our people who all reject your currency and your control. It echoes in the silence of African leaders who finally refuse to be pawns. You have until now benefited from our division. You fed on our tribal tensions, sowed discord, and presented yourself as the only solution to the chaos you engineered. But Africa has read the manual now. We've studied your tactics. We've named your games, and we've chosen not to play. We are building a new order, one not defined by your parliaments or polished in your press. A sovereign, unbought, uncolonized order rooted in truth, dignity, and justice. This is your warning. Return what you stole. Not only the artifacts that sit behind glass, but the resources, the honor, and the independence you stripped with treaties signed at gunpoint. Return them or face a generation that no longer fears your flags or your threats. You see, this is not just Burkina Faso speaking. This is the voice of Africa, unfiltered. The voice of Mali rising, the voice of Niger awakened, the voice of a continent that has been quiet too long. You may mock our courage on your screens, you may twist our message in your editorials. But the ground beneath you is shifting, your grip is slipping, your time is ending. We do not seek vengeance, we seek restoration. But make no mistake, restoration is not a request. It is a demand backed by resolve, and we are prepared to stand, to resist, and if need be, to rebuild from ashes. This is only the beginning, signed with fire, not fear. From Ouagadougou to the conscience of a sleeping empire, wake up or be swept away. The currency of chains. France, let us speak plainly now. You did not just take our gold, you minted it into your prosperity, then returned to sell us back our own freedom at interest. The CFA franc, that colonial relic you swore was an economic partnership. Let the world hear it today. It is not a currency, it is a lishek. For decades your government claimed it ensured stability. But whose stability? Was it the African farmer who could not export his harvest without your permission? Was it the mother in Ouagadougou whose bread cost more because the euro sneezed in Paris? Was it the young Burkinab genius who had to flee to Lyon or Marseille to find value for his mind? No, the only stability it brought was to your stock markets, to your illusion of African dependency, to your dream that our nations would never truly stand alone, because your hand would always be on our throat. Disguised as a handshake, you demanded we deposit our foreign reserves with your central bank. You taxed our sovereignty before we ever collected it. You robbed us and told us to be grateful for your management of the spoils. How dare you? You built cathedrals in Paris with the profits from Congolese rubber, Ivorian cocoa, Burkina cotton, and then had the audacity to place African masks in your museums labeled not as loot, but as artifacts generously donated. You built wealth with stolen hands and then raised those same hands as if they were clean. But we remember how your corporations operated behind puppet regimes siphoning uranium from Niger. While her people sat in darkness, we remember how your embassies played chess with our elections, installing leaders who spoke French fluently but never dared speak freedom. We remember the coups you funded, the resistance you labeled as rebels, the patriots you called threats to democracy. No more. The youth of Africa are not your colony. We are not here to beg. We are not here to bargain. We are here to reclaim. And hear me clearly, this is not a request. And this is a final notice. So return what you stole. Not just the artifacts, not just the gold, not just the money sitting in your vaults. Return the respect, the agency, the right to chart our destiny without your shadow. We will no longer ask. We will act. The CFA franc will fall. Because a continent cannot rise with foreign chains around its economy. We will build our own institutions. We will trade in our own currencies. We will educate our children in our own languages. We will define ourselves not through the lens of a Paris newsroom, but through the eyes of African wisdom and truth. You can call it defiance, we call it deliverance, and do not mistake our unity for noise. What you hear rising across West Africa is not mere outrage, it is order being restored. What you hear from Mali, from Niger, from Burkina Faso is the sound of empires being broken. Without bullets, just by the truth. We did not come to threaten you with war, but understand this, if you continue to threaten our freedom with debt, dependency, and deceit, then you will indeed face a storm not of our weapons, but of our will. A storm of minds awakened, a storm of youth mobilized, a storm of nations aligned no longer on your terms, but on our own. Africa will not remain in the waiting room of history. Our hour has struck, and in this new dawn, the old currency of control is worthless. The lion has risen, and he does not negotiate with those who once held the whip. The lion of civilization, France, you once carved it a civilizing mission. You arrived with the Bible in one hand and a rifle in the other. You taught us your prayers, but banned our drums. You showed us cathedrals, then destroyed our temples. You spoke of light, but moved like shadows. And when you were done baptizing the soil in our blood, you dared to say we were better off. Better off. You erased languages that carried centuries of wisdom. You outlawed names that spoke of identity and spirit. You tore families from roots, turned kings into prisoners, turned queens into housemaids. You humiliated sages, buried griots, and then wrote your own version of history, where the conqueror is always civilized and the victim always silent. But hear this now, we were never uncivilized, we were uncolonized. And there's a difference. Before you built your palaces, we built kingdoms. Before your flags flew over our lands, our ancestors flew with the stars. Timbuktu was teaching the world when your kings were still hunting in forests. We birthed mathematics while you battled superstition. We honored nature while you divided the heavens into pieces of paper and called it ownership. So no, Franze, you did not bring us civilization. You brought us interruption. To see, your greatest success was not just in stealing land. It was in stealing the mirror. You made us see ourselves through your gaze, ashamed of our skin, our tongues, our gods, our rhythm. You didn't just rob gold, you robbed memory. You didn't just take cotton, you took confidence. You didn't just loot minerals, you looted meaning. But now the mirror has shattered, and what stands before you is not the Africa of yesterday. Not the Africa that apologizes for wanting dignity. Not the Africa that boasts when it builds. Not the Africa that waits for handouts dressed as help. We are not ashamed of what we were before you came. We are not confused about what you did. And we are not afraid to say it now. You lied. You lied to our fathers. You lied to the world. And you're still lying every time your media calls our resistance instability. Every time your officials call our independence dangerous. Every time your think tanks publish fear-mongering analyses about military regimes in West Africa. What's truly dangerous is truth. Because truth cuts deeper than bayonets. And the truth is this. We do not need your version of civilization. We do not need your endorsement to be free. We do not need your textbooks to define who we are. We will raise our children on the shoulders of our ancestors, not in the shadows of colonizers. We are not asking for charity. We are demanding clarity. Return what you stole. Not just gold, not just artifacts, not just currency, but our story. You want peace, start with honesty. You want friendship, start with repentance. You want Africa to stabilize. Then remove your boots from our economy. your fingers from our elections and your lies from our history books. The storm is not coming. It is here too hot, and it wears the face of a new African generation born in truth, raised in fire, and determined to finish what Sankara, Lumumba, Nkrumah, and all our fallen giants began. We are the storm, and this time it will not pass quietly. Reparations or reckoning. France, you have mastered the art of evasion. When we speak of theft, you speak of aid. When we speak of reparation, you speak of cooperation. When we demand justice, you offer partnerships. But let me ask you this, what partnership begins with a locked vault and ends in silence? What ally refuses to return what it knows it stole? Let's stop pretending. Reparations are not a favor. They are not a grant. They are not an act of mercy from a benevolent former empire. They are a moral debt, a spiritual accounting for centuries of plunder, humiliation, and systemic underdevelopment. We are not here to beg. We are not here to negotiate with thieves. We are here to serve notice. You have 21st century skyscrapers built on foundations of stolen stone. You hold economic conferences funded by the blood of African labor. Your national museums are sanctuaries of our stolen gods. Our ancestral statues caged behind glass, labeled unknown origin while you sip champagne beneath their gaze. Unknown origin. We know the origin. We are the origin. It is not difficult to return what never belonged to you. You've returned undiluted art to European families. You've paid reparations to victims of wars you did not win. Yet when Africa demands the same, your voices stammer. Your pens dry up. Your mouths suddenly forget the language of justice. And so we ask, is our suffering not real enough? Is our blood not red enough? Or is it simply that African pain has never carried weight in your courts? You say it's in the past. But our people still drink from poisoned rivers left barren by your mining corporations. Our soil still bears the scars of your bombs and bullets. Our economy still choke under debts created by deals you wrote in runes we were never allowed to enter. So don't speak to us of time, because if time healed all wounds, we would not still be bleeding. We will not be pacified by your think tanks. We will not be silenced by your embassies. And we will not be fooled by your apologies, scripted in diplomatic French. Return the gold you took from Burkina Faso's votes. Return the 90% of Niger's uranium profits you still collect. Return the billions in stolen reserves you hold in your banks. Return the artifacts you used to decorate your guilt. You say, but this is complicated. Now what's complicated is justifying why a former colonizer still profits from its colonies decades after independence. You say it's legally ours, then your laws are written in the language of thieves. You say it's not that simple, but it was simple when you took it. France, this is not just about money. It is about restoring spiritual balance. It is about putting fire to the illusion that you can erase a crime by calling it history. We are not chasing revenge. We are proclaiming rebirth. Africa is not rising to destroy. Africa is rising to rebuild. But no house can stand on soil where ghosts still roam free. No nation can thrive while its soul is still held hostage in the vaults of its oppressor. So choose your path. You can meet this moment with cordial return. What you stole, acknowledge what you did, and finally walk alongside Africa as equals. Or you can resist. You can stall. You can cling to illusions of empire and a world that has already moved on. But know this, whether you choose repentance or resistance, the outcome will be the same. Africa will rise, with or without you, and when we do, it will not be in your image but in our own. Not with your approval, but with our ancestors' blessing. You once called us the dark continent, but look again. The darkness is receding, and it is your lies that are being exposed to the sun. Return what you stole, or face the reckoning that history has long promised. The African phoenix, France. What happens when the fire you lit to destroy us becomes the very fire that refines us? You see, colonization was not just an invasion of our land. It was an attempt to extinguish our essence, to reduce us from guardians of the earth to servants of empire. You came with maps and muskets, treaties and terror, and called it civilization. You stripped us of our names, our gods, our rhythms, our wisdom, and called it progress. But you made one fatal mistake. You thought Africa would forget. You thought the chains would outlive the spirit. You thought that once the kings were dethroned and Magritte silenced, the continent would simply kneel forever. You were wrong. Because Africa is not merely a place. Africa is a spirit, and you cannot colonize spirit. Today, that spirit is reawakening not just in the soil of Burkina Faso, but in the drums of Mali, in the fire of Niger, in the rivers of the Congo, and in the thunders rolling over Ghana. We are no longer seeking validation. We are seeking vindication. The African phoenix has risen. We are burning the lies in your textbooks, melting the chains in your vaults, and reclaiming the crowns you once buried beneath shame and silence. Friends, we do not hate you, but we do not owe you reverence. You trained us to look west for answers, but now we look inward for purpose. You taught us to bow at foreign altars, but now we stand before our ancestors with open arms. You convinced us that God was foreign, but now we know He was walking with us long before your missionaries arrived. You see, we have tasted the bitterness of subjugation, and now we are intoxicated with the sweetness of sovereignty. That's why your fear is growing. Because you know deep down that the age of manipulation is ending. Your puppet strings are snapping one by one. Your planted regimes are being uprooted by storms of popular will. Your licenciés, protected by global médias, now exposed in the marketplace of truth. And here is what truly terrifies you. We are no longer asking, we are declaring. We are no longer petitioning the halls of your parliaments. We are building new ones with our own bricks, on our own land, in our own language. This is not just about reclaiming resources. This is about reclaiming the right to dream in our own tongue. You want to talk about democracy? Let's talk about the democracy you silence with sanctions. Let's talk about the uprisings you label coup d'etats only when they resist your puppets. Let's talk about your military bases, not for defense, but for control. Let's talk about your cooperation agreements written in the ink of coercion. Democracy cannot be imposed from abroad. It must rise from the ground, like the baobab from our roots, from our needs, from our people. This new Africa is not reckless. We are strategic. This new Africa is not hostile. We are resolute tests. This new Africa is not confused. We are finally awake, so we tell you plainly without apology, return the treasures you've hoarded, dismantle the systems you've rigged, and the economic slavery hiding behind loans, behind aid, behind trade deals designed to fail. And understand this, the longer you delay justice, the heavier the price will be when the final receipt is printed by history, because we will not stop. We will not retreat. We will not hand over the sacred awakening in exchange for crumbs. The storm is no longer on the horizon. It is in motion, and we are not afraid. We are the storm's architects. We are the drums in the dark. We are the lion's roar in the morning. We are Sankara's echo and Nkrumah's prophecy fulfilled. We are Africa, and we are done whispering. The silence that screams, France, you have been quiet, too quiet. Your politicians speak in hushed tones behind velvet curtains. Your journalists suddenly forget how to pronounce Burkina Faso. Your embassies issue statements of concern wrapped in the same colonial perfume that reeks of entitlement. But we hear you, because even your silence speaks. It is the silence of discomfort, the silence of a power that senses its throne trembling, the silence of a puppeteer who feels his strings being cut one by one. You hoped we would shout into the void. You hoped the world wouldn't listen, but the world is listening now. From the townships of South Africa to the favelas of Brazil, from the refugee camps of Palestine to the stolen lands of the First Nations, I'm looking for voices are rising, spines are straightening, people are seeing the truth behind your polished diplomacy. A little bit that your empire was never built on civilization, it was built on submission. And submission is no longer on the menu. You see, for too long, France, you have been allowed to exist behind the mask of culture. You draped your legacy in paintings and poetry while hiding the shackles behind the gallery walls. You taught your children to be proud of the Eiffel Tower, but never told them how. Many African skulls lay beneath your streets. You called your language a gift. We call it a wound. You called your presence in Africa partnership. We call it possession. And now the possessed have broken their chains, and your silence cannot unchain the truth. So let me speak into your silence. Let me tell you what you already know but refuse to admit. Or the CFA franc is a colonial weapon, the currency designed not for development but for dependence. You decide how much we print. You decide where our reserves are stored. You even collect interest on our money while offering us loans laced with poison. You are the lender and the leech, the banker and the burglar. And yet you call it economic cooperation. Let me speak further. Your soldiers still march across Sahel soil under the guise of counterterrorism. But what is terrorism if not the ongoing theft of sovereignty? Who armed the rebels? Who benefits from the chaos? Who negotiates contracts with both the victims and the aggressors? You sit at every table but never bring food. Only contracts, only conditions, only control. But now we are flipping the table. We are no longer your experiment. We are not your product. We are not your backdoor to African wealth. We are the children of Sankara, of Lumumba, of Amilcar Cabral, of Patrice Mary Lumumba's blood still cries out from Congolese soil, asking the same question we ask today. When will justice come? France, if you had apologized 50 years ago and returned what you stole, perhaps there would have been room for reconciliation. But your arrogance has closed that window. This is no longer about friendship. It's about freedom, and freedom by its very nature cannot be negotiated. It must be taken, but before. That is why you fear this movement. Because we are no longer asking for crumbs. We are demanding the whole harvest. Not just our gold, but our storytelling. Not just our diamonds, but our dignity. Not just our artifacts, but our authority. You looted us of material wealth, then looted us of confidence, then looted us of each other, pitting tribe against tribe, brother against brother, and then standing back to collect the spoils. But something has changed. The continent is rising. The youth are waking. The elders are speaking again. The spirits are restless and ready. The ancestors are no longer silent. They walk with us and they do not fear embassies or economic threats. You tried to erase us with time, but now time is our ally. And history is turning its gaze not toward Paris, but toward Ouagadougou, toward Bamako, toward Niamey, toward a new constellation of African resistance. You had your century, you had your empire. Now step aside, because the storm you feared is no longer forming. It has arrived, and in its thunder we will not whisper. We will not plead, we will not compromise. We will speak with one voice, one truth, one vision. So return what you stole, or face the storm we become. A reckoning beyond gold. France, by now you understand, this is no longer just a political moment. It is a spiritual reckoning. This is not about Burkina Faso alone. This is not even about Africa alone. This is about truth confronting centuries of well-dressed lies. This is about the world looking into the mirror and seeing the reflection of its crimes. You robbed us of gold, but you also robbed the world of what Africa could have been had we been left to grow, to flourish, to lead in our own divine rhythm. So let's be plain now. You say we're studying division, but tell me who carved the divisions in the first place? Who drew borders that split tribes and united enemies just so their rule would last longer? Who trained African sons to wear European uniforms and whip their own fathers in the name of order? Who introduced shame where there was once pride? Who renamed cities, erased gods, destroyed libraries, and called it reform? You did. Your colonization was not just economic theft. It was a war on memory, a war on language, a war on soul. And now as we rise, you tremble? Not because we are armed with tanks, but because we are armed with truth. Truth is heavier than bullets. It spreads faster than drones. It breaks stronger walls than sanctions ever could. France, for centuries, you stood atop a pedestal built on African bones. And every time we cried out, you said, it is the past, move on. But we are now moving on. We are moving through, and we are marching through the corridors of injustice, passing by every museum that holds the stolen pieces of our ancestors, and we are naming what you fear the most. Restitution, not just of artifacts, but of agency. Not just of resources, but of respect. This is why your diplomats grow pale when we speak, because we do not carry briefcases filled with compromise. We carry the prayers of our grandmothers, the courage of our revolutionaries, the vision of our prophets. We are no longer playing your game. We are writing new rules on ancestral parchment. Yes, we are still poor in currency, but we are rich in conviction. Yes, we still face hardship, but we do not beg from the same hand that slapped us, because we have seen what begging brings. It brings aid with strings, loans with chains, partnerships where only one side profits. That era is over. Friends, if you cannot walk with us as equals, then step aside, because the African march will not slow for those clinging to the past. We don't seek revenge. We seek reckoning. We don't seek isolation. We seek dignity, and we don't fear your disapproval. We fear betraying the unborn children who will ask us one day, what did you do when Africa stood up? We will tell them, we reclaimed our name. We reclaimed our land. We reclaimed our voice, and now we are reclaiming our power. Let the world hear this clearly. Africa is no longer your resource pool. Africa is no longer your laboratory. Africa is no longer your pawn. We are becoming what we were always meant to be, the light to the nations, not in imitation but in revelation. So friends, your options are simple. Return what you stole and wealth, dignity, memory. Or watch your influence crumble beneath the rising tide of African consciousness. Because we are not waiting for your permission, we are walking through the fire. And on the other side of this fire is a continent no longer bowed, no longer broken, no longer blind. This is the storm, and we are its thunder. This is the reckoning of, and we are its drumbeat. This is Africa, and we are awakening. The dawn of a new covenant. France, as the storm gathers on your horizon, understand this. We are not your enemy. We are the keepers of a promise. The promise made long ago before borders, before empires, before the first plundered gold coin left our soil. A promise whispered by our ancestors in the winds that sweep the Sahel. A promise etched in the bones of the earth beneath the baobab trees. A promise carried in the songs of the griots and the prayers of the elders. This promise is the covenant of Africa's rebirth. It is a covenant that calls us to reason, not just to reclaim what was taken, but to build something greater, something that no empire can steal, something that no power can destroy. We are not here to repeat the mistakes of the past. We are here to forge a new alliance between peoples, between nations, between continents. An alliance built on respect, on justice, and on shared humanity. We want cooperation, not colonization. We want partnership, not puppetry. We want dialogue, not dictates. The world is watching France, not just Africa, because this movement is more than regional, it is a global beacon. Across the planet, marginalized peoples are awakening. They see in Africa's struggle the mirror of their own. They feel in our courage the rhythm of their liberation, and you have a choice. You can resist this tide and drown in your own arrogance, or you can embrace it and become part of history. History remembers those who build bridges, not walls. History honors those who listen, not those who shout over the crowd. The time has come to return what you stole, not as an act of charity, but as a sacred duty. Return our art, return our artifacts, return our resources, return our stories whole and unbroken. Return our dignity untarnished and respected. And in doing so, you will find that you have not lost power. You will find that true power lies in humility and honor. True power lies in recognizing that no empire lasts forever, that no throne is eternal, that justice like the river finds its way, no matter the obstacles. France, we extend our hand not as supplicants but as equals, not as victims but as victors, not as subjects but as sovereigns. Let this be the dawn of a new covenant, a covenant that acknowledges the pain of the past, but chooses to walk boldly into the future. A future where Africa's wealth is used to build schools, not walls, where African children learn their history, not just the history written by others, where African voices rise in every global forum, not just as echoes, but as leaders. This is our vision, this is our destiny, and no matter the storms you send, no matter the threats you make, no matter the silence you impose, vision will shine, because it is rooted in the deepest truths of our being. It is nourished by the spirit of our ancestors. It is unstoppable, and friends, choose wisely. Return what you stole, or face the storm of a people united, awakened, and unbreakable. The choice is yours, but know this: Africa's dawn will break with or without you. The unbreakable spirit of Africa. Francis, in the depths of your grand halls, you may believe you hold all the cards. You may think your wealth and armies shield you from consequence, but you have forgotten the greatest power repulses the power that no weapon can destroy. The spirit of Africa. The spirit is older than any map, stronger than any decree, and more enduring than any empire. It flows in our veins like the mighty Niger River, winding through hardship, yet never ceasing. It sings in the voices of our children playing under the vast skies, dreaming of freedom. It stands tall in the eyes of our women, fierce and unyielding, nurturing life despite all odds. You cannot buy this spirit. You cannot intimidate it. You cannot silence it. No gold, no military might, no foreign influence can break this spirit, because it is bound to the land. It is woven into the fabric of our culture. It is rooted in the blood and sweat of generations who refused to bow. Your colonization tried to crush it. Your borders tried to divide it. Your false narratives tried to erase it. But the spear survived. It grew stronger in secret, like a flame smoldering beneath ash. And today that flame bursts into a wildfire of awakening. This is why you fear us, because this spirit will not be negotiated away. It will not be sold for a seat at your table. It will not be chained by your loans or conditioned by your aid. This spirit demands justice. It demands restitution. It demands freedom. And it demands to be recognized not as a footnote in your history books, but as the beating heart of a new world. France, look beyond your illusions of control. Your time of dominion is ending. The future belongs to those who respect sovereignty, who honor dignity, who build together. You can still be part of this new chapter. You can still choose to walk with us, not behind us, but beside us. But if you persist in your theft, your lies, your arrogance, know this. The spirit of Africa will rise. It will not be silenced. It will shake the foundations of your old world. And when that day comes, there will be no apology. There will be no reconciliation without accountability. Because the unbreakable spirit of Africa demands nothing less than truth. France, hear this as the voice of a continent waking from centuries of sleep. We are here, we are awake, and we will not be broken. France, the reckoning is no longer a distant thunder. It is a storm gathering at your doorstep. A storm born from centuries of silence, exploitation, and broken promises. This reckoning is not vengeance. It is not hatred. It is the natural order restoring itself. Just as the baobab tree stands tall after the fiercest drought, just as the lion roars to reclaim its kingdom, so too shall Africa rise, proud and unyielding. But this resurrection will not be complete without truth. Truth about the stolen wealth buried in your vaults. Truth about the hands that shaped our destiny without our consent. Truth about the lives lost, the cultures erased, the futures stolen. We demand truth not to punish blindly, but to heal collectively, because the wounds of colonization still bleed in our nations. Because the chains of debt still weigh heavily on our people. Because the silence around our pain has allowed injustice to thrive. France, it is time to listen. Listen to the cries of our farmers denied fair markets. Listen to the pleas of our children who cannot afford education. Listen to the songs of our elders mourning, a heritage scattered across continents. This reckoning will lead to resurrection not just of our lands, but of our spirit, our economy, our culture. When you return what you stole, you will not lose power. You will gain honor. You will regain respect on the world stage. The world is watching, France. Your response to this call will define your legacy. Will you choose denial and division? Or will you choose justice and unity? The future we envision is not one of confrontation, but of collaboration. A future where Africa leads with its own voice, where partnerships are built on equality, where wealth circulates freely for the benefit of all. This is the resurrection Africa reborn from the ashes of colonization, rising not as a victim but as a sovereign giant. France, the choice is yours. Face the reckoning with courage and humility, or be swept away by the unstoppable wave of history. The dawn is near, and Africa will rise no matter what. The new path of dignity and sovereignty. France, as the winds of change sweep across our continent, we stand at a crossroads not just for Africa but for the entire world. This new path demands courage to admit past wrongs, courage to dismantle systems built on exploitation, and dare courage to embrace a future where dignity and sovereignty reign supreme. We are not here to beg for scraps from your table. We are here to build our own table solid and unshakable, where our children sit with pride and their heads held high. Sovereignty is not a word to be thrown lightly. It is the breath of life for any nation that seeks to determine its own destiny. Africa's sovereignty means control over our resources, control over our narratives, and control over our futures. This sovereignty will no longer be compromised by neocolonial forces disguised as aid or partnerships. We see through the veils of diplomacy that mask ongoing plunder. France, the world is changing. Africa is no longer content with being a pawn on your chessboard. We are the players, the strategists, and the game changers. The path ahead is illuminated by the light of our ancestors, who fought for freedom with unwavering resolve. Their sacrifices are the foundation of our revolution today. But this revolution is not fueled by anger alone. It is rooted in hope. Hope for a continent where every child can dream freely. Hope for economies that serve our people, not foreign interests. Hope for governments that are accountable to their citizens, not to external powers. France, you have a role to play not as a master but as a partner. a partner willing to acknowledge the past, rectify injustices, and support Africa's rise without strings attached. The choice before you is clear. Will you continue to cling to a fading empire, or will you step forward as a true ally in Africa's destiny? The new path calls for honesty, for justice, and above all, for respect. Respect for Africa's sovereignty, respect for Africa's right to self-determination, respect for Africa's future. We do not ask for permission to exist to claim our rightful place as equals on the world stage. France, the era of shadows is over. The era of light and truth has dawned, and Africa walks this path with unbreakable resolve. The promise of a new dawn. France, as this message reaches you, understand this is not just a warning. It is a promise forged in the heart of a continent that refuses to be broken. Africa's promise is radiant and resolute, a new dawn rising over the horizon. This dawn is not shaped by the greed of foreign powers, but by the hands of millions of Africans reclaiming their destiny. We promise a future where our lands flourish under the stewardship of those who cherish them. We promise a future where wealth flows to the people who nurture it, not siphoned off to distant capitals. We promise a future where culture is celebrated, history is honored, and the wounds of the past are healed through justice and reconciliation. To France and to all who have played a part in Africa's suffering, know this: the path of denial is a path to isolation. The path of truth is a path to partnership. The path of justice is the path to peace. We extend a hand strong, unwavering, and open for genuine collaboration. But make no mistake, this hand will not be shaken by lies, nor will it be extended indefinitely to those who refuse to change. The storm you face is not a threat from Africa's anger. It is the inevitable consequence of centuries of injustice meeting the unyielding power of truth. The storm is the awakening of a continent that will no longer accept theft disguised as aid, nor subjugation masked as cooperation. France, the choice is clear and final. Return what you stole, acknowledge the truth. Respect Africa's sovereignty, or face the storm that will reshape the world order and define history. This is Africa's moment, a moment of reckoning, resurrection, and rebirth. We walk forward with courage, faith, and the unshakable knowledge that the future belongs to those who dare to reclaim it. France, hear this: Africa is awake, Africa is rising, and Africa will no longer be denied.